Hello and welcome to top10list.org, where you get a world of knowledge in 10 simple points. On today's episode, we're going to talk about the top 10 most annoying elements in RPGs today. Let's go ahead and dive right into the game at number 10. Simple battle systems are usually what make RPGs good in the first place. In an attempt recently to spice up the experience and avoid endless grinding specific to the genre, numerous developers decide that the best approach is to alter the battle system. On the other hand, in some games, altering the battle system simply is taking a few steps too far, adding so many useless things that players find themselves completely distracted from the battle. There is nothing more frustrating than having a bunch of enemies on you and being clueless about how to pull a certain combo or being forced to enter a new menu to drink a health potion. Number 9. True, the cutscenes are nice for the first couple of times. Another popular trend with RPG games is somewhat of a bizarre tendency of including cutscenes before important or dramatic points of the story. Now, while I can agree with that and there's nothing wrong with this approach, there is practically no reason why games should include multiple scenes and critical points that they last longer than 2 minutes. In addition, besides the fact that there are many and rather long certain games that do not include the skip option and force the player to watch the same scenes repeatedly, yes, they may be interesting and they may be an important component of the story of the game. Nonetheless, developers should acknowledge the fact that they also get boring after viewing them a couple times or when you're playing the game for a second time. Number 8, we're here to slay, not waste time with shopping. Even though the whole idea of RPGs is to convey a certain degree of realism, this should not imply overdoing it with the shopping experience in the game. Essentially, when it comes to shopping, nobody wants to waste his time listening to the merchant's line, then browse through various menus, open a new menu to compare the vendor's item with the ones equipped on the hero list, and this could go on forever. Most players know that the best items of the game are not found at vendors, and hence they prefer a straightforward shopping experience. Walk in, sell, buy, and leave. Number 7, why are those animals carrying sacks of gold? This is a good question. Truth be told, chests found in the middle of nowhere and animals carrying gold has been around in the RPG realm for what seems like an eternity. While most players are not bothered with this issue at first, the trend in nowadays RPGs should aim for more realism. Nonetheless, if a game were to contain random chests and drops, developers should really consider a different approach, such as hiding them better and providing skills that help players discover them easier. Number 6, wandering aimlessly indefinitely is not as exciting as developers think. Sure, wandering around and discovering the universe of the game is a big part of the RPG experience. Think of Skyrim, for example, or Far Cry. However, this does not necessarily entail that developers should not provide any clue about where your hero is supposed to be heading, especially at the beginning of the game when the player is in the learning phase. If the game does not include at least a basic map, then developers should consider other options like the one used in Hunted, the Demon's Forge, for instance. Number 5, there are too many kinds of kids in the story. Really, stop it. There's not a single RPG game that does not include kids or teens in the story, from orphans whose parents were killed by the villain, like in most of them, to child princes ruling over entire kingdoms. Even though nobody is against including children in RPGs, many players like us believe the developers are overdoing it. Number 4, if you're going to use voice acting, don't skimp. Back in the old days, voice acting was not a must-have for the genre, and people were free to let their imagination do the work for them. However, the new hype is to attribute a voice to the heroes and other secondary characters. The problem here is that not all voice acts are rich in character personality or memorable at times. The heroes' voices are enough to break or make the game. Basically, add a bad speech to a show of poor voice acting and you will surely not impress anyone. Number 3, totally uninspired hero names. Some games allow the players to choose the names of the heroes, while others really like to spoil it by giving their characters silly and goofy names. The harsh reality is this: even the most stereotypical Japanese RPG on the planet cannot justify naming the main hero Knight Swordmaster. On a side note, in the defense of the Final Fantasy hero Cloud, it is enough to say that even though his name might be a little different, he earned his chops. Number 2, what happened to the content? Many passionate gamers happily recollect the times when they needed several weeks at least to finish a game. Nowadays, they complain that the RPG world is filled with DLC and expansions. In order to get a clue about the lack of interesting content these days, you only need to look at the recently released Diablo 3. It was perhaps one of the most awaited games of 2012, and it took it 11 years to develop, yet the content was completed in less than 6 hours. This is true in normal difficulty mode. Number 1, does the plot really need to be in medieval times? Wandering and fighting in a medieval setting in an entire world populated with castles, kings, and princesses was fun once. In fact, when the RPG genre first appeared, the stories in these games were one of major appeals. However, everything found in the market in the past couple years gives people the impression of a bad remake. The bottom line is RPGs can exist outside of the 16th century, and games such as Phantasy Star Online and the Mass Effect series, as well as Star Wars The Old Republic, are a living proof of that. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful Gamers edition of Top 10. If you enjoyed, click subscribe and don't hesitate to join us again for another episode of Top 10 List.